You know, it's funny, isn't it? How a single sentence can crawl under your skin and rattle around like a loose coin in an empty jar. Keep your mouth completely shut. Oh, that one hits different. Because the moment you try to obey it, suddenly the whole world gets louder. Every whisper, every stare, every thought you've buried deep starts scratching at the inside of your skull, begging to spill out. Silence reveals your strength more loudly than your words ever could. Ah, that little idea sounds simple, doesn't it? But it sits there like a ticking clock buried under the floorboards, counting down, vibrating through everything you are. People think silence is weak, awkward, a sign that you don't know what to say. They look at a quiet face and assume it's empty. They see closed lips and think the mind behind them must be small, soft, harmless. But what they never realize is that silence is where the real storms gather, where the real teeth grow, where the real fire waits. Words are easy. Anyone can toss them around like confetti. Anyone can scream, complain, beg, argue, throw their emotions into the air, hoping something sticks. That's noise, that's cheap. But silence? Silence is expensive. Silence demands control. Silence demands patience. Silence demands that you look your own impulses in the eye and say, "Not yet." People can't handle that, it rattles them. They prod you, poke at you, throw little tests your way, waiting for you to break character, waiting for you to slip, waiting for you to give them a single spark so they can start a fire of their own. But when you stay quiet, when you hold your ground without raising your voice, something strange happens. You become unpredictable. And humans fear what they can't predict. They start wondering what's going on behind those silent eyes. They start imagining all kinds of possibilities, most of them far worse than anything you would have actually said out loud. Your quiet becomes their noise. Your stillness becomes their discomfort. Your restraint becomes their confusion. You don't even have to lift a finger. Just breathe a little slower, blink a little less. Let their words dissolve in the air while you stand untouched. Silence is strength because it means you're not ruled by your impulses. Everyone has that instant urge to snap back, to defend themselves, to prove a point. It's a reflex like trying to catch a falling knife. But when you learn to silence that reflex, when you train yourself to let the knife hit the ground instead of slicing your hand open, that's when you realize how much power you were giving away in the name of feeling right for a moment. Silence protects you from yourself. It shields you from unnecessary battles, from conversations that drain you, from people who feed on reactions like parasites. When you keep your mouth shut, they starve, and in their confusion, you learn something precious about them, who they are without your energy fueling them. There's another little trick silence plays. It sharpens you. In the quiet, you hear more. You notice the tremble in someone's voice, the shift in their tone, the crack in their confidence. You see the way their eyes dart around when they say something they don't believe. You watch their body fold in on itself when they realize you're not giving them what they expected. Most people never get to see these details because they're too busy rehearsing their next line, too busy talking. But you're studying, you're collecting information, you're learning the landscape before making a move. And that makes every move you eventually make so much sharper, so much cleaner, so much more deliberate. But the real secret, the one nobody talks about, is how silence changes you. It forces you to sit with your thoughts long enough to understand them. It pushes you to question why you feel the way you feel instead of blurting out the first emotion that bubbles up. You become aware of patterns, of wounds, of triggers you didn't know you had. And once you see them clearly, they lose their grip on you. Silence becomes the room where you rebuild yourself piece by piece. No applause, no audience, no noise to drown out the truth. Just you, facing yourself and realizing you're stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for. So while the world is screaming for attention, demanding reactions, trying to drag you into its noise, you stand there with your mouth shut, your mind steady, your pulse slow. And they don't know whether to be impressed or afraid, because silence doesn't tell them which version of you they're dealing with today. And that right there is the loudest strength you can carry without ever opening your lips. Keeping quiet exposes the true character of the people around you. Oh, that's a delicious little truth most folks never want to admit. Because when you stop talking, when you stop feeding people with explanations, reactions, reassurances, when your silence becomes the only mirror they can look into, suddenly their real selves crawl right out. It's almost amusing watching how people behave when they can't predict what you're thinking. It strips away their masks faster than any argument ever could. You don't have to interrogate them. You don't have to catch them in a lie. You don't have to corner them with evidence. Just shut your mouth and watch. The silence does all the heavy lifting for you. People are funny creatures. They love to perform, to act like they've got everything under control. They put on polite smiles, fancy attitudes, a little charm here, a little sweetness there, like they're auditioning for some invisible audience. But that act only works as long as you keep playing along. The moment you stop talking, the moment you stop giving them cues, validation, or direction, the performance starts to crack. Silence removes the script they rely on. And without that script, they show you exactly who they really are. Some get nervous, fidgety, desperately trying to fill the space you left empty. They ramble, over-explain, apologize for things you never asked about. Not because they care, oh no, but because they can't stand not knowing what's going on inside your head. Then there are the impatient ones, the ones who get irritated when you go quiet. They start snapping, pushing, demanding answers. They want you loud because your silence forces them to look at their own reflection, and they don't like what they see. They accuse you of things you never said, project their own fears onto you, tell you how you must be thinking this or that, and all the while, you're just sitting there, breathing, watching the truth leak out of them drop by drop. Silence exposes the manipulators too. They rely on reactions, your reactions. If you don't give them a spark, they can't ignite the fire they need to twist your emotions. They poke at you, waiting for you to rise to their bait. But when you stay quiet, really quiet, they panic. They lose their grip because their power was never real. It was borrowed from your response. Without your voice, without your energy, they shrink into the small, fragile things they've always been. And the insecure ones, oh, they're the easiest to read. A few seconds of silence and they crumble. They think every quiet moment is proof they've done something wrong. They apologize again and again, their eyes darting around, trying to decode your expression like it's a bomb they're trying to defuse. They reveal their fear of abandonment, their need for approval, their hunger for reassurance. All because you said nothing. That's the beauty of silence. It's an X-ray for the soul. You also start noticing loyalty, or the lack of it. The ones who stay comfortable around your silence, who don't get threatened or impatient, those are the people who don't need you to perform for them. They don't require noise to feel secure. They don't demand explanations for every breath you take. They sit with you in the quiet like it's the most natural place in the world. Silence brings out the sincerity in them. You see how they look at you, not with suspicion, but with understanding, not with anxiety, but with steadiness. They don't run away from silence because they don't run away from truth. But the best part? Silence teaches you more about people in 5 minutes than their words teach you in 5 months. Their expressions, their pauses, the way their eyes twitch when the mask slips for just a second, it all becomes so clear. You learn who respects you, who fears you, who envies you, who secretly resents you, who wants something from you, who values you, who uses you, and who would never stand beside you unless your noise benefits them. And all you had to do was close your mouth and let the room grow quiet. That's when people stop performing and start revealing. That's when the truth finally crawls out, trembling, naked, uninvited. And once you see their real character, once you witness who they are, without the costume of conversation, you can never unsee it. Silence becomes the sharpest lens you've ever looked through, and the world never looks the same again. Self-control turns chaos into clarity. Now that's a little secret nobody likes to talk about. Because people adore chaos. They cling to it, breathe it in, spill it everywhere like a child playing with paint they can't control. They call it passion, honesty, just how I am. They act like their impulses are sacred, like every spark in their skull deserves to be thrown into the world immediately. And then they wonder why everything burns. But when you learn to hold yourself back, when you learn to look at the storm rising inside you and tell it to sit down for a moment, you start seeing something terrifyingly beautiful. Chaos stops owning you. You start owning it. And that's when clarity walks in like it's been waiting behind the door the whole time. People think self-control is about being quiet, polite, boring. They imagine someone with a stiff spine and a frozen smile, swallowing their emotions like bitter medicine. They completely miss the truth. Real self-control isn't about killing your fire, it's about mastering it. Imagine having lightning in your hands and choosing when to strike instead of striking just because the sky twitched. That's the difference. Anyone can react, anyone can snap, anyone can explode. That doesn't make you powerful, that makes you predictable. But holding yourself steady when everything around you is shaking, that's where the real strength starts to bloom. Chaos lives inside everyone, thoughts racing, emotions flaring, old memories clawing their way to the surface. And most people just let all of that spill out of their mouths or their actions without a second thought. But when you learn to pause, when you choose not to let that chaos steer your decisions, the world starts slowing down in front of you. You begin to see things sharper than before. You notice the lies hidden between someone's words, the cracks in their confidence, the patterns in their behavior. You hear what they don't say. You feel what they're trying to hide. Your mind becomes quieter even while the world roars. Self-control lets you detach from the noise. And once you detach, you see how ridiculous most chaos actually is. Half the arguments people start, just ego looking for sand to kick. Half the drama they cling to, just insecurity screaming for an audience. Half the battles we fight, ghosts from yesterday disguised as emergencies. With self-control, you start recognizing these illusions for what they are. You stop chasing every shadow, stop explaining yourself to every confused soul, stop reacting to every poke and prod thrown your way. And suddenly life feels clearer, not calmer, not softer, but clearer. You can see the battlefield without charging into every fight blindfolded. Then comes the part that scares people. When you master your emotions, when you don't spill your anger, panic, or fear all over the floor, others can't read you anymore. Their usual tricks don't work. They try to provoke you, but you don't move. They try to impress you, but you don't blink. They try to get a rise out of you, and all they get is that quiet stare. Your silence becomes their mirror, and whatever monster they've been hiding from inside themselves shows up right behind their shoulder. They don't fear you because you're dangerous. They fear you because you're disciplined, and people fear discipline more than they fear madness. Madness they can predict. Discipline, that's a wild card. But here's the twisted little reward self-control gives you. When you stop reacting automatically, you start choosing deliberately. You pick your words like a blade instead of a fistful of sand. You pick your actions with intention instead of emotion. You decide which battles are worth bleeding for and which ones deserve nothing but a raised eyebrow. And your life starts shifting in ways you didn't think were possible. Opportunities appear that you couldn't see when you were tangled in impulses. People reveal themselves in ways you missed when you were too busy shouting. Choices become easier because you're not making them from chaos. You're making them from clarity. And clarity, that's the most dangerous power a person can carry. Because once you see clearly, nobody can manipulate you the same way again. Nobody can lure you into traps built on emotion. Nobody can drag you into storms you already learned to walk through in silence. Self-control doesn't cage you. It frees you from every cage you used to build inside your own head. It makes you untouchable in a world addicted to noise. It makes you sharp in a world that loves dullness. And it turns you into someone who doesn't chase chaos, but walks through it with a calm that haunts everyone who expected you to fall apart. Not reacting is sometimes the most powerful reaction. A strange little truth people never understand until it's too late. Everyone is addicted to reactions. They want fireworks, sparks, explosions, anything that proves you felt something, anything. They poke, they prod, they push every button they think you have, all just to watch you twitch. They need your anger, your panic, your frustration like oxygen, because it tells them they still have some kind of pull on your strings. But when you don't react, when you just stand there with that unsettling calmness, lips still, eyes steady, heart refusing to dance to their chaos, oh, that's when the game changes entirely. People expect you to rise to the bait. They set little traps in the form of insults, drama, twisted stories, silent treatments, sarcastic tones, all crafted with the hope that you'll snap. They want a show. They want proof they got under your skin. But when you give them nothing, no raised voice, no frantic explaining, no emotional outburst, they lose their script. They freeze, confused, because suddenly the scene they rehearsed in their head has no partner. They're swinging punches at air. They're performing for an audience that refuses to clap. Your lack of reaction becomes a giant mirror, and they're forced to look at themselves in it. You'd be surprised how fast people crumble when they can't shift the blame onto your response. Without your reaction, their true intention shines through like a spotlight. The manipulation becomes visible. The insecurity becomes obvious. The cruelty looks naked. The childishness screams louder. Your silence exposes everything they thought they had, hidden under the noise of conflict. Not reacting is powerful because it steals the fuel from their fire. Some people survive off drama like it's their favorite meal. They stir trouble, then sit back waiting for your explosion so they can say, "See, look how you are." But when you don't explode, when you don't give them that moment, their whole plan collapses in their hands. They don't get to paint you as the villain. They don't get to play the victim. They don't get to rewrite the story. You take all that away with one choice, not reacting. And here's the twisted part. They feel it. Oh, they feel it deeper than any insult you could ever throw. Your calm hits harder than your anger. Your silence is sharper than your words. It makes them anxious, uncertain, insecure. They start second-guessing themselves. They wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're capable of. When you lash out, they know exactly where you stand. But when you don't react, you become unpredictable, unreadable. People fear what they can't read. Not reacting also protects you. It keeps your peace from being dragged into someone else's storm. It keeps your energy from being drained by battles that don't deserve your breath. It keeps your dignity intact when others are trying to pull you down to their level. It's not weakness, it's restraint. It's choosing not to bleed for situations that don't matter. It's refusing to let someone else's chaos take control of your emotional steering wheel. And in the quiet you create, you start seeing everything more clearly. You see which arguments were never worth having. You see which people only appear during conflict. You see who tries to trigger you just to make themselves feel alive. And you see who becomes uncomfortable when they can't manipulate your response. Not reacting becomes a spotlight that reveals intentions you didn't notice before. It's amazing how loud silence becomes when someone was counting on your noise to hide their motives. But the real beauty lies in the shift that happens inside you. When you stop reacting to everything, you stop being controlled by everything, you stop allowing every comment, every gesture, every rumor, every attitude to dictate your mood, the world stops shaking you like a toy. You stop bending under every breeze of negativity. You become centered, stable, almost unsettlingly grounded, and people don't know what to do with someone who can't be provoked on command. Not reacting doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't hand your power away like loose change. It means you decide when to speak, when to move, when to act, on your terms, not theirs. It means your emotions belong to you, not to the world poking at you to get a show. And once you taste that level of control, once you understand how liberating it feels to choose silence over chaos, you start seeing reactions for what they really are. Invitations to places you no longer need to visit. Silence protects your energy from people who don't deserve access to it. Now that's a truth that stings a little, doesn't it? Because most people don't even realize how much of themselves they hand out for free. They let anyone wander in, poke around their thoughts, drain their emotions, yank their attention, twist their mood. They treat their peace like it's a public park. Open 24/7, anyone can stroll in and leave their trash behind. And the saddest part? They think talking is strength. They think explaining themselves to every confused, nosy, or manipulative soul is some noble duty. They pour out their stories, their pain, their plans, their hopes, their fears to people who aren't even listening. People who just want something to use, something to gossip about, something to feed their boredom. But the moment you go quiet, truly quiet, you start to see how many of them were never there for you, only for the access. Silence becomes a shield, a thick, invisible barrier that stops certain people from crawling into your mind and rearranging the furniture. The moment you stop giving them your words, you stop giving them your energy, and suddenly the parasites suffocate. The ones who depend on your reactions, your anger, your explanations, your emotions, they start scrambling. They poke at you a little more. They get louder, more dramatic, more desperate, because without your energy, they're nothing. They don't know what to do with your quiet. They don't know how to feed off you if you give them no emotional crumbs. You see their intentions clearer when you're silent. That's the beautiful part. You notice who only talks to you when they want something. You notice who loses interest when you're not entertaining them. You notice who gets offended when you don't overshare. People with bad intentions hate silence because it stops them from gathering ammunition. They can't twist words you never spoke. They can't manipulate emotions you never displayed. They can't control you when you stop giving them access to the buttons they once pressed so easily. And silence keeps your energy from leaking out in places where it wasn't appreciated. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves your truth. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability. Not everyone deserves to sit in the front row of your life. Some people only show up to steal the spotlight. Some only show up to dim yours. And some only want a backstage pass so they can ruin the show from behind the curtains. But when you stay quiet, when you hold back, you stop giving them anything to hold against you. That's when you see how small their interest really was. Silence also helps you conserve your strength. You don't waste it trying to change someone's mind. You don't waste it defending who you are to someone who's already decided who you should be. You don't waste it on arguments that solve nothing or people who listen only to reply. You save it. And when you save your energy, you finally have enough for yourself. Enough to think clearly, enough to feel honestly, enough to heal, enough to grow. You stop scattering your power across 100 meaningless conversations and start focusing it like a beam. And that's when everything starts shifting in your favor. People get confused when you stop giving them access. They think you're hiding something. They think you're planning something. They start filling your silence with their own fears and insecurities. They accuse you of being distant, cold, arrogant, changed. But the truth is, you're just selective now. You're choosing who gets to hear your voice, who gets to feel your presence, who gets to walk into your world. And that choice scares the ones who were used to strolling in whenever they wanted. Silence is a filter. You don't even have to push people away. The ones who aren't meant to stay just drift out on their own. They get bored, they get confused, they get frustrated. They leave because they're not interested in you. They were interested in the access to you. And when the door finally closes, you're left with peace. And the few people who remain deserve their place. But the most powerful part of silence is how it shifts the attention back to you. When you stop talking, your energy stops leaking outward and starts circulating inside. You start hearing your own thoughts instead of everyone else's noise. You start feeling emotions without having to justify them. You start strengthening your intuition until it becomes loud enough to guide you better than any conversation ever could. Your silence becomes a sanctuary, a room no one can enter unless you open the door. And you realize, not everyone deserves a key. Not everyone deserves even a knock. Some people deserve nothing more than the sound of your silence, reminding them that access to you is a privilege they no longer hold. Stillness lets you hear the truth beneath all the noise. A curious little magic trick that most people never learn, because they're too busy drowning in the sound of their own panic. They think they're listening to life, but really they're just reacting to the constant echoes of their fears, their habits, their past. Noise is everywhere, outside, inside, around, within. People talk too much, think too fast, feel too loudly, and rush through their days with their minds buzzing like broken streetlights. They confuse movement with progress, loudness with importance, chaos with meaning. But the moment you stop, the moment you hold still, even for a breath, the world changes its shape. It's like someone turned down the volume on reality, and suddenly the things you were never supposed to hear become clear as day. Stillness is unsettling for most people. They avoid it like a dark alley. They don't want to sit with their own thoughts because their thoughts whisper truths they've been running from. They'd rather keep moving, keep talking, keep distracting themselves. They fear the quiet because the quiet doesn't lie. The quiet shows them who they actually are when the world isn't clapping or shouting or demanding something from them. But when you embrace stillness instead of running from it, you discover a kind of clarity that feels almost illegal. You start hearing the things behind the things, the motives behind the words, the tension buried under the smiles, the cracks in the stories people tell you. Stillness lets you step outside the noise and see the world without the distortion of rush and reaction. In stillness, people reveal themselves without realizing it. Their voices sound different. Their intentions become obvious. Their actions speak louder than their noise. When you stop responding instantly, you can actually observe. You notice the flicker in someone's eyes when they're lying. You catch the hesitation when they're hiding something. You feel the shift in energy when their words don't match their truth. You begin to detect patterns you missed before because you were too busy getting swept up in the drama, the tension, the rush of the moment. Stillness slows the whole world down just enough for you to see its real mechanics. And stillness doesn't just help you understand people, it helps you understand yourself. When you're quiet, when you're not trying to impress, defend, explain, or perform, your mind finally gets a chance to breathe. The thoughts you avoided come knocking. The emotions you buried rise to the surface. The desires you denied start whispering their names again. At first, it's uncomfortable. It feels like sitting in a room full of ghosts you thought you'd buried. But those ghosts aren't there to haunt you. They're there to teach you. Stillness drags the truth out from the shadows inside you. Truth you couldn't hear when your mind was full of noise. Your instincts grow sharper in stillness too. Instincts are quiet creatures. They don't scream, they whisper, and you only hear them when you're not drowning in everyone else's noise. You start noticing the subtle pull in your chest when something isn't right. You feel the heaviness in the air when someone's intentions are off. You sense the opportunities hiding behind silence, the warnings hidden in stillness, the paths that light up only when everything else goes dark. It's like discovering you've had a guide inside you the whole time, but it couldn't speak through all the mental static. Stillness even changes how you make decisions. You don't choose from fear, anger, panic, or pressure. You choose from clarity. You don't rush into situations. You walk in with purpose. You don't let the noise of the moment trick you into choices you'll regret. You see the long game, the bigger picture. You understand that reactions are loud, but clarity is quiet and far more dangerous. People who live in noise can't understand this. They mistake stillness for hesitation, silence for weakness, calmness for passivity. They don't realize that the person who waits quietly is often the one who sees everything. And in stillness, the truth always rises. Lies fall apart when the noise stops. Manipulators lose control. Drama dies without an audience. Most chaos collapses under its own weight when you stop feeding it. That's why stillness is frightening to some. They know their illusions can't survive in the quiet. They know their noise works only on people who never stop long enough to see the truth beneath it. Stillness gives you power without lifting a finger, the kind of power that comes from understanding, from observation, from patience, the kind of power that lets you walk through storms without getting blown apart because you're not reacting to every gust of wind. You're listening, you're watching, you're waiting. And in that waiting, in that quiet, in that refusal to be swept up by everyone else's noise, you hear the truth the world tries so hard to hide. Holding your tongue trains your mind sharper than any argument. Now that's a lesson carved in the shadows, a lesson most people never learn because they're too busy letting their mouths outrun their brains. They think speaking first makes them strong. They think replying fast makes them smart. They think being loud makes them right. But the moment you stop, the moment you bite down on that instinct to fire back, that urge to defend, that impulse to clap back with something clever, your mind starts forging itself into something far more dangerous than a quick tongue. It becomes disciplined, focused, razor sharp in ways noise could never shape it. There's a strange thing that happens when you don't say the first thing that bursts into your mind. You start hearing the second thought, the third thought, the one buried beneath the emotion, the one that isn't fueled by anger, ego, insecurity, or pride, the one that's actually true. Most people never reach that thought because they spill the first one right into the air. And once the words escape, they chase them with more words, trying to justify the mess they made. But when you hold your tongue, when you let the silence stretch just long enough, you give your mind permission to think before you expose yourself. Suddenly you're not reacting, you're analyzing. And it's funny, isn't it, how silence becomes a battlefield of its own. In that quiet moment where you say nothing, everyone else starts revealing their cards. They rush to fill the space you created. They talk more, explain more, slip more. Their nerves make them tell you things they never intended to share. Your silence pulls confessions out of people like a magnet. It's incredible how much truth falls out of someone when you simply refuse to speak. Their motives, their fears, their insecurities, their real intentions, all because you kept your mouth where it belonged, closed. Holding your tongue sharpens your mind because it prevents you from leaking power. Every unnecessary word is a drop of energy wasted. Every argument you enter without thinking is a battle that drains you dry. Every explanation you offer to someone who doesn't deserve it is an invitation for them to twist your meaning. But when you stay silent, your energy coils inward instead of spilling outward. Your thoughts sharpen instead of scatter. Your emotions settle instead of explode. Silence becomes your training ground, and your mind becomes the warrior forged inside it. And the discipline, oh, that discipline is a force of nature. It teaches you to observe instead of react. You start noticing everything. The way someone's voice changes when they lie, the way their eyes shift when they feel exposed, the way their tone trembles when they realize they can't read you. You become a collector of details, storing them quietly while others reveal themselves loudly. You learn to wait, you learn to listen, you learn to see the entire situation instead of the small slice your emotions wanted you to respond to. That kind of clarity doesn't come from arguing. It comes from restraint. Holding your tongue